Thank you so much for tuning in again to Tazeen TV, a space dedicated for you to explore your own spirituality, healing and growth. Now, I'm delighted and extremely honoured to be joined today by Sandra Biskind. Sandra, welcome. It's wonderful to meet you. For those less familiar with your work, I just want to share that Sandra is CEO and founder of Global Soul Spiritual Mentorship. She's also co-creator of the Platinum Life System, plenty about that coming up, as well as co-author of the international #1 best-selling CODEBREAKER book, and director with Lifewave Energy Patch Technology, which, Sandra, I'm so excited we get to talk about this because I've only just started using them this year, and it's brilliant to get some more wisdom and your experience of these patches as well. So welcome.
Thank you. It is such an honor to be here. I can actually feel this incredible love and divine energy that we're co-creating together, and just feels beautiful. So thank you for inviting me on your show.
No, thank you. And I'm so delighted. In fact, just before we began, we were connecting on Sufism, and I was kind of sharing about my own journey within Sufism. And it's just so beautiful that you connect and know so much about this very beautiful tradition.
Oh, I love Sufism. We had a Sufi wedding. We actually had 3 Sufi weddings, and the woman who married us, Halima McEwen, was the head of the Sufi Order of the West. Hazrat Anayat Khan was obviously the person that she was very, very much in love with. But what I found so beautiful about this is that Sufism embraces everyone that holds the light and love of God aloft. And for me, I was in. The moment I heard that, it was like, well, that's it. That's what this is, because I have been having deeply spiritual experiences all of my life. But when I had my first religious experience in a church at the age of 14, I was like, oh no, this is not what it is all about. This is not it. And it was such an interesting juxtaposition from the 3-year-old who would go to bed at night, and this incredible man, he called himself Jesus, would come and speak to me. And so I had this connection to this divine being, and we were not in a religious family, so I had never heard that name before. And then I just was so hooked on everything to do with God and love, because at that stage, as a small baby, really, I mean, I was told that I was a child of God, that I was love, and that it was my job to actually help people understand that that's exactly who they are. And I remember going to my mummy at around 4 years of age and saying, "Mummy, I'm going to be a priest when I get older." And she said, "No, you're not, son. You're not Catholic and you're not a man." And I do remember going away and thinking, I don't know what Catholic is, but I know I'm not a man. And I thought, well, nuns are women. So I went back the next day and said, "Okay, Mummy, I'll be a nun." And she said, "No, Sandra, you don't want to be a nun, sweetheart. You won't be able to get married and have babies." And I did put my hands on my hips. And you know that 3- and 4-year-olds can do that quite well. And I looked up into her eyes and I said, "Don't you worry about a thing, Mummy. When I get older, I will work for God." And so I just knew that that was my calling right from a very young age.
How beautiful, Sandra. You've touched on so many elements in this, actually. Last weekend, I was attending the Festival of Ray, which is the first interfaith festival where women of different traditions who have taken on that gauntlet to become priests, imams, and rabbis across the 3 major traditions got to share their experience of being women leaders of faith. And of course, it's such a journey with the divine feminine, her awakening within us, and really the sort of misogyny, patriarchy that has gripped religion over the centuries. And I mean, myself, I identify so much with what you're sharing with respect to the Islamic tradition, where the role of women has always been such a struggle, and it's gone through generations. And so we've got, of course, this intergenerational trauma that's coming up very globally on a very wide scale at the moment, as I feel like our grandmothers are sort of slowly whispering to us to awaken just into everything you've shared about this deep self-love, but not in this crazy, narcissistic, social media driven, all about me selfie love, because that's not it either.
No, well, that's actually not really love. I mean, if you think about it, love is definitely not an emotion. Love has nothing to get, give, or do. Love is the most powerful energy in the cosmos. So love is a presence. You know, love is how we want to show up. Love is home, because actually God is love. So when we're in that energy frequency of love, that highest frequency, we're home in the heart of God. And so that's not narcissistic on any level. In fact, it's expanding, it's inclusive, it's tolerant, patient. It's everything that, I mean, it's joy. I even talk about, I can't wipe the smile off my face, and I talk about love and God in the same breath, because that's when everybody's heart, I mean, this conversation we're having alone, the frequency of this conversation is so high. I mean, I'm sure you can feel it, and everybody watching, that this is we're up here with this frequency, and that's love. Love is when you're showing up with that light so bright deep within us that people are almost blinded. They go, what is this? I want what she's having, or I want what he's having, right? And that's God, that's love in action. And we've all been given a mission and a purpose to actually show up as the best version of who we are. But to do that, we really have to clear out unconscious programs. And I'm talking about programs from all of our ancestors, which is really what you're saying as well. And I go as far as to say, and all of our past lives. We've got genetic inheritance. We've got millions of miles of DNA deep within us with so much information in it that not all of it serves us. In fact, hardly any of it serves us, because it's perceptions, it's projections, it's events, emotions, and decisions that were made in times of trauma and pain, and that our ancestors made in times of trauma and pain, that once we clear it out, we become free to actually love fully. But whilst ever it's there, love becomes the social media love. It becomes the narcissistic love. People are really opening up and waking up now to what real love is. And I just see people cry. You know, it's like, oh, you mean I'm free? I'm free to be me. I'm free to say, it doesn't matter what I've said or done. I still deserve love and support. You know, I am forgiven and I forgive. I mean, there's so much going on in just that one little sentence that you said just before I started talking.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, I want to kind of break this down, because the ethereal meta high level is one thing, but we are embodied.
Yes.
We're human. Part of Earth School, as Byron Katie always says, is, you know, to become the believer of the dream and then to slowly awaken from it. And Earth School is pretty difficult. And what you've described sounds so simple, and yet
it's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. You realize, Tazeen, you just hit on something so important. The reason why we wrote Codebreaker, this is the book, and you can see it's a hefty volume. You know, this took us 5 years. The reason why we wrote this book is because we were really given we were downloaded this information that we understood was our legacy to the world. And it's a system that is so simple. However, in order to master it, you have to master your mind. It's a mind training system. And once you start mastering your mind, living in a 3D reality becomes a very different experience. Because if you think about it, everything that you think has a vibration and a frequency, and everything that you think creates an emotional reaction of one one kind or the other, which means the body, your 3D body, is constantly either being uplifted and supported, or it's constantly being downgraded and put into a place where it is open and susceptible to disease and unhappiness. So you've got these two, well, we call them codes. You've got the fear code and the love code. So the love code, yes, right?
I know, I was just literally going to pull the question out without me having to ask it, which is these opposites that we traverse in, fear, love. I mean, I can hold love and fear in the same moment, or I can experience love in my inhalation, and I will be trembling with fear in the exhalation. And so, yeah, I'm really curious to how we can make this sustainable and a consistent experience.
Yeah, well, you know what, that's the feedback, Tazeen, thank you. That's the feedback that we've been getting from people who are working with the Platinum Life System. So what's happening is, if you can imagine that your soul is evolving into coming home to God, to love, right? And it's been hijacked by the ego mind, which is the ego code of fear. Well, there's a lot of codes there. But what happens is, with Platinum, if we master our superpowers, and our soul has 8 incredible superpowers, and they are peace. That's a real superpower, isn't it? When you come into that place of peace, love, of course, awareness, trust is a huge superpower, integrity, neutrality, which is another word for enlightenment, unity, and mindfulness. Now, if you master Platinum, that's going to mean that you are having an experience on this planet that is like no other. However, in order to have that experience, we have to master the blocking frequencies to it. So for instance, with peace, unforgiveness is a core blocking frequency to peace. So you cannot be in the peace code if you haven't forgiven yourself or others. It's just impossible. And that's why wars continue, by the way, because people find it hard to get into that peace code. The unforgiveness code is just so, it's rampant on this planet, right? And for love, the core blocking frequency for love is fear. So once you're in fear, you've dropped out of your heart center, you've dropped out of that love frequency. And one code takes over the other code. So, and we're encoding ourselves over and over and over again by our thoughts, what we're saying, what we're doing. And so the idea is, if you're in a state of fear with this system, what you do is you acknowledge, this is very important. You need to wake up and train the mind to do and think what you want it to do and think, which is, oh, I'm in fear. I am feeling fear. What does that mean? Oh, it means I'm no longer in the love code. Okay, what do I need to do? I need to do a U-turn, open my heart, stop, meditate, ask myself the 4 questions, a really brilliant tool that we have, and get myself back into the love code. And probably the easiest one to understand is trust. When you are worried or anxious, what's happened is you're concerned about what's going to happen in the future, right? And you've lost your connection to trust, which is a superpower. So when you're worried and anxious, all you have to do is go, oh, I'm worried and anxious. You actually have to know what you're feeling moment to moment to moment. And as soon as I'm worried and anxious, I go, wow, what am I not trusting? Oh, I'm not trusting that this is going to unfold for the highest and best good. I'm not trusting that I'm really well prepared for this interview. I'm not trusting that I'm good enough. I mean, can you see how the system works? It's really, really such a simple system, but it takes diligence, like all growth and transformation. And we can be inspired by the most incredible teachers of every lineage, and we can be so inspired by them. But to have transformation happen, we need to get out the bandages. We need to maybe take a nap. Transformation is more than inspiration. And so what we're aiming for is a total transformational experience.
I'm guessing this is what Buddha talks about with realizing for self. I mean, trust is such a big concept, even in Sufism. We call it the Waqatul Allah, which is in every moment you're turning and seeing the face of God that's coming for a reason, and it's for your own awakening. And yes, I mean, spiritual bypass, been there, done that one, Sandra, where you think, you know, there's a particular, I think part of the problem has been the system that we've grown up in, and the way that everything is quite a linear path of progression of I do A, B, and then I'll hit C. And it doesn't work like that at all. It's the experience, because we are forever students of the divine, constantly in relationship with the divine, whilst also rubbing up against the human earthly realities. I mean, Rumi says, will you be irritated at every rub?
Yes, and you know, that's the thing. I think they understood that the unconscious mind is running our business and our show, our life, over 95% of the time. And so we're always getting these unconscious programs coming up where we have these knee-jerk reactions. They slap us around, we open our mouth and say things and go, wow, where did that come from? And, you know, we call this solving unsolvable problems. It's like you don't know what you don't know. So if it's in the unconscious, it is hidden from you. And that's what, when Rumi says rubbing up against, you know, this third reality, what's happening is that we're rubbing up against these unconscious programs over and over and over again until you get clear of them. And once you get clear of them, and this is what this is, it's like a clearing out process. It's almost like peeling an onion to get to the pearl, you know, within the heart of God. And so you're peeling this onion of all of these unconscious programs that have come from your ancestors, that have come from your past lives and your own conditioning. But each time you do it, you get lighter, freer. I mean,
and I guess you start to trust, like when you talked about trust, that really resonated and connected, because I guess you do it once, you're flexing that muscle of trust. You do it again, and you're strengthening it over and over and over. And I guess it links back to the core, like we call it the relationship between the soul and its rub being that intimate connection, as I'm sure you're familiar with it, of the divine within each of us, and starting to really cultivate that self-trust, which, you know, we were just talking about being women in these different traditions. And the first thing you're taught, literally from, as you described, the age of 3 upwards, is that you can't trust yourself as your woman and your intuition. So you spend so many years going against your own intuition, potentially, only to then come into it again.
I think a lot of parents now are more, you know, they're much more tolerant of the fact that their children are having intuitive experiences, or they've got friends, you know, other beings as friends, and that they're not squashing them. Like in my day, no one even knew that I was having the spiritual experiences I was having, because I didn't talk about them. They were never talked about. Can you imagine, you know, if we had have been in homes where we were allowed to say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I know to be true, we would be so far ahead. But everything is happening. I trust that everything is happening for the highest and best good, and that every time I come up against a challenging situation, for me, I'm not looking at it as, oh, okay, so this is a lesson I need to learn. I feel like I've gone beyond that. What for me it is, and I'd love everybody to come to this place, is, oh, this is a challenging situation. It doesn't feel good. What's my program? I just go straight to, what's the program? You know, what is within me that I believe to be true, that has put me on this frequency, that has brought this event, manifested this event into my life. So we call this radical personal responsibility, where we say no one else is responsible. So remember, as women too, we made the agreement to come back and incarnate, and we're in a very, very exciting time. I mean, a lot of us have been those women who were put down and told to be silent and to be a shadow. But now we've come out of the shadow in this lifetime. And the important thing is that to understand that once you're out of the shadow, don't focus on the shadow, focus on the light. And, you know, okay, we have to focus on the unconscious programs to clear them, but it's not like you don't have to go back in and relive it. And that's what I love about this, unlike other therapies. It's cleared in an instant. And I think that you know too that when we're transforming who we are, it's not, you said it before beautifully, you said this is not a linear experience. It's an experience that goes like this. And every time you go through this beautiful, whoa, I've just made a step, then you might have a dark night of the soul for a moment, and then you come up and you go. But every time you move up, you're moving up higher and higher. It's not even like that, it's like that. And I just find the experience of transformation so exciting, because having really now being a spiritual teacher for 40 years, when I see people come in who are still really in pain from their ancestral programs, from, you know, the religious programs, from everything that they've been through, it's like, okay, take a deep breath, let's go in and find out what this is all about. And remembering that we all made the decision to incarnate into the families that we have, into being with the people that we deal with. And why did we do that? Like, what's the program? What am I here to clear out of my karmic records, to clear my karma? Because if you think about it, the moment you clear a karmic agreement, it's no longer the agreement. So we teach people to clear karmic agreements and bring in the brand new agreement, as in, I am a person.
That's really, really beautiful, actually, because I think so many times we can just kind of get a bit lost in it.
Yes.
And kind of forget that the people we chose have played their part perfectly. They've been the perfect teachers.
Sometimes in award-winning style, right?
Yeah. Almost too well, you're right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so much we can talk about here. Like, I mean, I love your neutrality, for example, in Platinum, that kind of 0 point where you can meet every face of God with the same love. And you're then kind of really not dependent on what's happening outside, because it's all coming back to, as Jesus would say, and in so many of the spiritual scriptures, know thyself, know thyself. And you're very focused on what we call in Islam the inner jihad. You know, I hear the word jihad so misused in the media, whereas the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, you know, he would say that the real battle isn't on the battlefield with the enemy. The real battle is the battle that we're doing in ourselves every day. You know,
absolutely. That is, see, these incredible teachers that really have done such humanity, such a service. They've given us a roadmap, really, and but for some reason, the majority of people have kind of gone away from finding out what the truth was about what these teachers said. And they're listening too much to a lot of the politics and everything around it. But if you really listen, they're probably saying very, very similar things.
Well, I think it's got partly to do with what we've both touched on. I think when religion was taken over for power, politics, money, predominantly by men, and when the feminine energy was stripped out of mainstream religion, I think it ended up where it did. And it's only through potentially the spirit with Mary and what she's bringing to mankind and womankind right now, that this rebalancing that you mentioned earlier, right now, this exciting time is coming to fruition. Something I wanted to ask you about is one of the pitfalls of going towards the light is the shadows come up even stronger. And yes, it's beautiful to get to a place where you don't need to focus on the shadows, but I imagine for a lot of people, the fear just gets really, really intense before they maybe metamorphosize from their chrysalis into the butterfly. So how does your program, how can you support that in a way whereby they can stay in the process no matter how painful it gets?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, because the process that we've put together is very unique, in that, for instance, we have people who've just started an 8-week program with us, and in the first week, they're all going through major things. Within 1 2-hour session, they're really already on a very different plane. So what I would love to say is that we're already the butterfly. We think we're the caterpillar and the chrysalis, but we're not. And I think when people understand, hey, you're already a perfect, divine, high frequency being, and the only thing stopping you from living that is your thoughts. So once you understand that, that's why this program is such rapid transformation, because we go in and the very first week it is, who haven't you forgiven? And really going back, and we do go back, by the way, we do what we call a quantum time travel, where you become a quantum time traveler and you do a time jump back to an event, emotion, decision, whether this lifetime or another, where somebody really betrayed you or did something that hurt you so much that you couldn't forgive them. And you made the decision during that time of pain, oh, I will never forgive, anybody ever again. I'll never trust. Love is dangerous. Like all of these decisions that we make that keep us in the ego mind world. And once we've come out of that, we neutralize and delete the emotional force of those old decisions, and we bring in a new karmic agreement, and we get people to forgive from their heart. And all of a sudden there's like this domino effect of everything that they thought that they were hanging on to that was hurting them, it starts to fall away, even in 1 2-hour session. So this is a very different process. It's like quantum leaping transformation, big time. I can't talk about it enough, really, because I feel so blessed that we were given this information. We didn't make up platinum. Platinum was just dropped down into somebody said to me, oh, so platinum was out there waiting to come in and dance with the world. And it was like, yeah. And having had divine guidance all of my life, I realized that as the teacher that I am, who really is integrated divine beings, I'm not a channel per se any longer. It's more like I'm just in physical reality and all of those multidimensional realities all at the same time. And so this information's coming through, and with this gift of being able to go into the matrix of your soul and really discover these events, emotions, decisions, it is such a quick process to release them. And that's why this growth and this becoming the butterfly, becoming the angel, and this perfect divine being that you are, is rapid. And the fear might come up. What happens to a lot of people is they're afraid, the ego mind puts them into fear that they are going to change because they know they are. So the fear that most people experience is, hang on a minute, the ego mind is like pulling you back, going, I don't think I should do this program. I don't think I should work with those people. And yeah, I've had people who have just actually come to my door to come into a 3-day weekend, and right up until they walked through the door, they've said to me, until you opened the door, I was still going to go. I was still, that, because the ego mind goes into fear.
It knows what's coming at times. I mean, we call it, in Sufism, we call it the nafs.
Yes.
And, the cleanser for the nafs is what we call zikr, which is chanting God and different names of God. And it almost knows it's coming, and it almost...
It does, darling. It is so incredible. We know everything. That's the whole thing.
But it needs to also be met with the deepest love and to be heard, and then it can just not, plus then remembering, as you've shared, what and who we really are, can then wash the nafs more. But yes, of course, like we've got these, I like to call it being addicted, almost like an alcoholic, to having like being a nafsaholic, because you know, it's so hardwired, right?
Definitely hardwired for fear. Remember that the back of our brain, the primal part of the brain, is fight or flight. It's always switched on, waiting for the shoe to drop. And the trick with the brain is to actually bring yourself into this place of total brain coherence, which you do by chanting the name of God, by meditating, going within. And then once you have total brain coherence, the primal encoding in the back of the brain and that fear, it's not triggered the way it normally is triggered. The frontal lobes now are more front and center. This is where we access intuition, soul, creativity. And so you find that you start to become more whole. And I learned a long time ago, it was a beautiful experience. Enlightenment was always, for me, my main focus. I remember going to see an Indian guru in Melbourne, and on the way up in the car, this question dropped into my head: what would you give up to be a fully enlightened being? And I just went, everything. There was not even a nanosecond, everything. And then I realized I had an evening where I was channeling some divine beings, and it was a room full of women, and they were so beautiful. And there was one man in the room sitting up the back with his arms around one of the women, his girlfriend. And after I had finished speaking, I asked, were there any questions? And he shot his hand up and he said, what is the greatest gift I can give my beloved? And every woman in the room went, oh, they all wanted to be his beloved, of course. And what came out of my mouth changed my work from that moment forward. And it was, the greatest gift that you can give your beloved is your own wholeness. So that when she looks into your eyes, she sees her own wholeness looking back at you. And in that moment, I realized there was something beyond enlightenment, and that was wholeness. And it's like whole brain, whole heart connection, brain coherence, body, mind, and soul in integrity. Wholeness is just another level again. And so that's the reason why we talk about integrating wholeness and integrated wholeness in CODEBREAKER, because it's where you do become neutral to all of the, is it the NAFs? All of
NAFs, yeah.
All of the unconscious programs that are really a nuisance. And what I love now is, for me, they've just become a nuisance. We say in CODEBREAKER that we've all got an ego puppy, and the ego puppy is obviously full of NAFs. And we don't want to kill the ego. We want to have compassion and tolerance for every aspect of who we are. And so when the ego puppy jumps up and barks and piddles and poops all over us and everyone else, we want to find out why. And we want to bring that aspect of who we are back home to God as well. And that's like really becoming whole. It's a beautiful system.
It sounds absolutely incredible. And I would love to know some of the participants, if you don't mind sharing a little bit of what shifted for them after the event.
Yeah, so a lot of them have come in with a lot of anger, by the way. There's this unconscious anger. There's anger about so many things. Look, especially this year, right? And what the instant shift is, oh, so I don't feel angry about everything anymore. One of the other shifts that people say is, I'm not triggered like I used to be triggered. People can say and do things that they used to do and say that would really upset me, and now I'm no longer upset. The leaders and entrepreneurs that I work with, their businesses get stuck, they procrastinate, they put things off, and once they've gotten rid of their unconscious programs, they go, wow, that was like $1 million call. My business is going through the roof. This is something that we hear all of the time, that people's businesses take off like they never expected them to, with grace and ease. And they go, but why? What is this? When you show up as the best version of you, when you're tapped into the divinity of you, you're tapped into such divine guidance that you're making decisions from a very different place. You're turning up at work, you're turning up wherever you turn up in such a different frequency that people are going, oh, I want to be around that. I want to be around her. I want whatever it is she's got, I want that. And people, one client I had who was a New York Times bestselling author, she did a whole year program with me. And she went to New York to offer up a new book. And she thought, oh, publishing's nothing like it used to be because of self-publishing now. And she thought, I'll be really lucky if I get a $250,000 advance for this book. That will be maximum. But she rang me for a consultation just before she went, and she said, I'm just feeling a bit anxious, and there was fear there. And in an hour we went through what the programs had been triggered, what they were. We deleted the emotional response. We went through her marketing program. I fine-tuned that a little bit. She went into that meeting in New York, and 3 hours later she rang me up and she said, you will not believe this, I just got $1 million advance for this book and you did that. And I'm going, no, you did that. You showed up with this confidence and trust, and you showed up on such a high frequency of understanding who you were, the value of yourself in this body of work, that they would have, anything that you gave them, they would have bought. And they're the shifts that people are making. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's so hard.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely incredible. And I feel what you really touched upon that is staying with me is the wholeness.
Yes.
Because it's firing from a really different space to ego.
Oh, completely.
I imagine that, someone else with overconfidence may have done something similar, but perhaps the energy is what we feed off of, right?
Exactly. Well, if you think about Buddha, Allah, Yeshua, Rumi, all of these incredible, Hazrat Inayat Khan, these people were definitely in a space of wholeness. They weren't just enlightened. They were, because if you think about this, there's a lot of enlightened masters on the planet, and you go, hang on a minute, how can they do these things? How can they possibly hurt people? It doesn't make sense that these enlightened people would hurt others, and yet you hear about it and see it all the time. And what happens is they're not in a state of wholeness. They've actually been diligent with this spiritual side. They haven't been diligent working out the unconscious, the personality side. But when you put the spiritual with the 3D reality unconscious, and you work them both at the same time, you come up here to wholeness, right?
Yes.
So, yes, it's a different space altogether.
Just a couple of quick questions, Sandra, if I may. I just wanted to go through your 4 questions in your Codebreaker book. First of all, just tell us more about them. And then also maybe if you could sort of tell us why working with these beliefs are different to other modalities out there. But first, just tell us about the 4 questions and why and how they're so powerful.
They're incredibly powerful because they help you make an instant shift of frequency. They change your state. And so for me, when I was 27, I had just come out of a painful marriage. My businesses were going downhill rapidly. I was in the fashion industry. Our town was going through a financial crisis and my business was feeling it. I had been in hospital, almost lost my life twice, been really sick. So here I am, this 27-year-old going, that poor girl. Anyway, but I remember going into one of my boutiques one day and a staff member came up to me and said, Sandra, when you come to work, we never know what we're going to get. Are you going to be angry, upset, sad, happy, a bitch? And it was like, wow, this light went on. And awareness is the A in platinum. And the frequency block at 2 is oblivious. And believe me, I was oblivious to how I was showing up and how it was affecting the people around me. And so instead of going into, complaining and blaming and justifying why I said, thank you. And every morning before I went into my businesses, I would sit in my car, I would take a few deep breaths and I would ask myself these questions because I realized that these questions, I was mastering my frequency. And when you can master your frequency, you are mastering your life. So I asked myself, okay, what am I feeling? And I was feeling angry, sad, unsupported, worried, anxious. I mean, the list went on actually, what am I feeling? And then it was, what am I focused on? So what am I focused on? Okay, well, I was definitely focused on the fact that I did not want to be in that business. I was getting phone calls every half hour from suppliers who wanted money that I didn't have. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. That was like, okay, that's what I'm focused on. Now, the third question is so important. What did I want to feel? It was like, okay, I just want to feel happy about going to work. And the fourth question, which is to me sometimes the hardest one to answer, but the fourth question is the ultimate result. It's what you want, and that's how you change your state. So for me, it was at that moment was, oh, I'm so happy and grateful that I had the wisdom and the creativity to even create these businesses. I'm so happy and grateful for my brilliant staff. I'm so happy and grateful for even for my suppliers. And I went into this gratitude and love of everything that I had created and co-created with my staff and my clients. And so when I walked out of my car, I was in this different frequency. I was no longer in this low frequency emotional state. I had changed my state to here. So when I walked in, my staff were going, oh, wow, it's really great to have you here. And what happened was people were coming into the business. It's like they were drawn into the frequency, and they'd say, we don't really want to buy anything, but do you mind if we stay here for a while? They wanted to be in this high frequency love state that I had managed to get myself into. So I put couches in all of my boutiques, and we opened champagne and tea and coffee and water for people. And what happened was, for me, at 27, in that really rock bottom state, below zero financially, I actually, by being able to master my frequency using the 4 questions, meditation, prayer, I was in a healing circle, I had incredible spiritual mentors. 3 years later, I was a self-made millionaire. And so other businesses that have been through a similar thing, losing their staff, things just not working out for them, when we teach them the 4 questions, changing your state and the way you show up is 95% of the showing up is a secret to success. Yes, you have to have knowledge. Yes, you have to be prepared. But honestly, if you don't show up as the best version of you, you can have all of that and still fail.
And it's always changing, because the best version of you in this moment is going to be different to the one tomorrow, to the one yesterday. So there isn't a final best version. It's just that better version at each moment.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Tazeen. I've never heard anyone say that before. But you're so right, because in each moment, as we're growing, transforming, it's a new incredible being that is showing up.
Yeah, I guess I just struggle with these sort of how we, on one level, Sandra, we're not even doing the thinking. We're not even breathing. We're being breathed and we're being thought. And I guess it's sort of how we, as you said, I think the word that you used was responsibility. You had a very beautiful, if you could just remind me again of the
personal responsibility.
Yeah. And this is again through Brian Johnson on the Optimize program, it was really beautiful just in breaking down this word responsibility. In fact, I believe someone who you mentor, Jack Canfield, has written about it in the Success Principles, which is responsibility is just about your ability to be able to respond.
Exactly.
And if we're operating like these icebergs, where everyone's only seeing the tip of the iceberg, and underneath the sea, there's the subconscious that's governing 90% of our life. It's just, again, this root of every single spiritual guide is know thyself, know thyself, know thy Lord. It's not saying change other people,
Mm-mm.
fix
No.
this outside of you, change that circumstance around you. It's always bringing it back to your own relationship with yourself and the one that you're carrying with your Lord. You know, I love when Byron Katie says it's God's business, my business, and your business. And whose business are you in?
And it's nobody else's business. Well, we say to people when they say, I'm so upset because somebody said this, this, and this, and I just say, look, it's none of your business what they said, right? The only thing that you have to think about is why you got upset about what was said. That's the program, right? That's the real radical personal responsibility. Yes, they said something, it triggered pain, it triggered a response in me. Okay, I've got an unconscious program around that. Why? What's the program? Oh, I get it. I know. I'm not good enough. Oh, okay. So I don't believe I deserve love. The moment you know yourself, you can change it. And the diligence that it takes to be a spiritual master, and we're all spiritual masters, the diligence that it takes is to get to know why you respond the way you respond. And when you can use the tools, when you can get into the deep unconscious program, you know, deep within that iceberg that you were talking about, then you're on this road to freedom like no other. And I think from my knowledge, someone like Rumi, for instance, he understood the unconscious so well because his words elicit such deep and meaningful shifts. You know, they hit right home into the heart. The soul rejoices when you listen to Rumi, and the same with Hafiz. And because of that, I honestly think that they understood what was going on with the unconscious, because their words are they're addressing the unconscious over and over and over again.
And they transcend time and space. So, I mean, Hafiz's lines of awake a while, be kind to your sleeping heart. Let it into the fields of light and let it breathe. When I first heard those, it's like I recognized home. Yes. Right? You know,
those words describe what the platinum system does for people. He just described it perfectly. Because isn't that where we all really want to be? We just want to be free of this karmic cartwheel that these codes and fear have put us on. We want to be home in the heart of God. We want to know that we are high frequency divine beings, that we're already home in the heart of God. See, a lot of the trauma in the world comes from the fact that people believe that they're such a bad person that they'll never get back home to God, or that God will never forgive them. And of course, God doesn't need to forgive anyone, right? As far as God is concerned, you are still love. You are the perfect divine high frequency being that you were created. Anything else is just an illusion and a dream. And that's why Hafiz and Rumi talk about the sleeping soul and waking up. Because when you wake up out of this three-dimensional dualistic world and come into the non-dualistic world of love and God, then you're free. And that's the world that Rumi and Shams and Hafiz were talking about. Wake up.
Right, but they also do talk a lot about humility, and you know, God is also, in some scriptures I was reading, insanely jealous and actually doesn't want another God, sort of rivaling God. So it's that sort of realization too, that in order for spirit to flow, we have to become like these empty earthly vessels, you know, emptied, as you mentioned, of all this decoding.
Yes.
That's blocking us. But one of the things I want to very quickly ask you, Sandra, and it's just more out of curiosity, and I hope you're okay with the question, is how is your process different from, let's say, I know Marissa Pierre, for example, does sort of hypnotherapy with the promise that it can rapidly release these unconscious blocks. Byron Katie's work I love and I'm very familiar with, and she has her 3 questions. And one of them isn't too similar actually to one of the ones that you have too. And then you've got other sort of people like Brendan Bayes and her work in the journey. And I'm just curious, you know, people who come to you or exploring some of these other pathways, what would the platinum person be seeking that's different? And why would they come to you?
That's a beautiful question, actually, because platinum is a comprehensive system and it's a comprehensive process. So that's how it differs from Marissa's a friend of mine. And what's interesting about that question is that I've got people who are doing the Platinum Life Mentorship and Coaching Certification Program at the moment who are also Marissa Pierre's hypnotherapists. They've done her training as well. And they're using both modalities. They're using, and also DeMartini. I've got DeMartini teachers who are now using our modality, and they're noticing a difference. They're noticing a difference in the reaction time, in the instant shifts. There is a definite difference in how they use the system and how the shifts happen. So I can only tell you, because I actually haven't done hypnotherapy. And I do know of Brandon Bay's work, The Journey, and of course I just love, I was going to, who is
Byron
she?
Katie.
Byron Katie, you know, love her. I love everyone that you're asking about right now. They're all beautiful mentors. I just know from the people who are using both systems in this case that they're saying, wow, we can't believe it, that the people who because they're only just shifting into this system, by the way, because they've only just been taught it, because we haven't taught anyone to do what we do up until this time, up until this year. So they're saying that, yes, they're getting good results from these other systems and these other, you know, protocols. And then when they bring in this, it's like a whole nother level. It's taking people deeper again. And I think because we're really focused on a quantum neutrality, we're really focused on this quantum level, no time, no space. Anything can happen on any level, any dimension. And it's just look, I can't explain it except to tell you that the people who have used all of these modalities and are using this one, they are getting brilliant results and they're getting deeper shifts. So I would say that you can't go wrong with any of them because truly, I've been blessed. I've had some women in my life who are the most amazing spiritual mentors, and I feel like God blessed me with them. And I just know that there's a time and a space when you're ready for certain things. So people who had done DeMartini for 10 years, for instance, came across the Platinum system with us at a live event and they went, so this is the next step. You know, people who had done Marissa Pierre and then came into this went, oh, we get it. This is the next step. It's almost like there's a process where when you're ready to go really full out on a quantum level, it's almost like that's this, right? Even though it's so simple, but it feels like it's creating different shifts.
I'm just quietly observing how you're all these incredible Western women, and I'm just really connecting with the Dalai Lama's sort of observation that it's the women of the West that's going to save the world.
Yeah.
So I've personal observation on how it is this feminine energy that seems to be bringing so much light in this way.
There's a lot of brilliant men mentors as well, but you are so right. And the Dalai Lama, wow, I had the most incredible enlightenment experience with him. But yeah, it is. We are all meant to be standing up. It's time. It's time to understand the truth of who we are. It's time to wake up. It's time to let this divine guidance come through, however it's coming through, and with all of the beautiful processes that are being disseminated into our consciousness so that we can help empower other people to be empowered. I mean, this is a beautiful time. I had somebody the other day in the Transformational Leadership Council call me and say, what are we doing here at this time? Like, we shouldn't be here at this time. And I just said, no, as a matter of fact, we really incarnated to be here exactly for this time. because this is the time where the light is needed the most. And this is who we are. I had a spiritual mentor, well, Halima McEwen, my Sufi, beautiful, beautiful Sufi master. And I said to her one night, Daniel and I would love to take you out for dinner. Where would you like to go? And she said, oh, I want to go here. And it was this local rundown hotel that was serving dinners. And I said, we'd like to take you somewhere better if you'd like to go. And she said, oh no, we have to go here. This is where the light is needed the most. It was, I was like almost crying, you know, this is where we have to go. This is where the light is needed the most. So this is where we have to be right now, in amongst all of this chaos and everything that's happening, this separation, all of this fear. This is where the light is needed the most. And it is the women of the West. It is our job to be that light.
So beautiful. I mean, I always want to end it there, but I want to get one last question in, Sandra, if you have time, which is on these really exciting Lifewave energy patches. In fact, that was kind of how I first found out about you and your work, is I came across Lifewave through Susan Treadgold. You can catch her interview actually on Tazeen TV. And it's quite an extraordinary, because I started this year in chronic pain, so I've kind of been on my own healing journey. And with God's grace, God's absolute grace and blessing, through a couple of different channels, things have really shifted. And then I came across the Lifewave patches, and I've blown away about the difference in the energy levels that I experience wearing the X39. And I would love to hear more about them through you.
Well, these are really high frequency new technology. So if you don't know what the Lifewave patch is, that the X39 that you're talking about, Tazeen, is an incredible, I mean, to me, I call this the medicine of the future, right? But we have access to it now. And what X39 is, it's a patch that consists of nanocrystals of information, water, oxygen, a little bit of sugar, and amino acids. And what happens when you put the patch on, your own light and energy activates the patch. The patch sends the information into the body, and the body uses the information to heal itself. In the case of X39, it activates copper peptide. When you activate copper peptide in the bloodstream, it lengthens the telomeres and starts to regenerate and activate new stem cells, which is incredible. And our stem cells start degenerating at the age of 25. By the age of 75, we have none left in the body at all. And that's why that's why you see rapid aging, you know, people in their 60s, 70s, 80s. However, when your own stem cells, and this is not third-party drugs, right? Nothing going into the system at all except information triggered by your own light and energy. So when you have over 4,000 stem cells that are reactivated and reverse aged when you're wearing X39. And what you find is, I don't know about you, but my hair is thicker. My nails, I have to, you know, file them down once a week. Everything is I've just got so much more energy, and I'm using quite a few of the different patches to control pain. And boy, wow, just amazing. I could see myself in a wheelchair, not too far in the future. And when I got patched up with the energy patches and the Eon X39, all of a sudden, with half an hour to an hour, all the pain was gone. The 3 degenerated discs in my spine are regenerating. And, you know, I've said to the scientist who discovered this technology, I said, you know, you do realize that this is a gift from God, don't you? And he just smiles and said, yes, I do. And so this technology is incredible. It's, you know, when I got out of pain from putting these on a particular day, I went out and I started a Facebook group straight away called #PatchMeUpBabe, because I'm going, I want everybody to use these patches. And obviously, you know, you need love and support. So the Facebook page, Patch Me Up Babe, is to just give people that love and support where they can ask questions and be a part of a community that is spreading this high frequency technology.
Beautiful. I mean, I literally just, Susan introduced me to it a few months ago, and I'm just blown away. I'm definitely going to look that one up, actually, Sandra, on Facebook. So thank you. And, you know, thank you so much for taking time out. I know you have a busy schedule, but for sharing this beautiful work that you and your husband do. And yes, thank you so, so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Tazeen, it's just been an honour being able to be on this show with you. And I just think for the people watching, we've just put together today, we've started a meditation library with some free meditations in it, and I would love you all to have access to them. So if you want to go to thebiskinds.com, that's our name, THE, the Biskinds, BISKINDS.com. Scroll down a bit and there's this part where you put your email in, and you'll have access to this meditation library, which we will be adding to. And I'm really excited about it. So I think it's working at the moment, but if not, just, you know, put your name in there anyway, because it will be working and you will have access to them.
All the information will be in the blog, so do refer to that. And of course, all the links will be in there for you too. So thank you very much again for joining me today, Sandra. Blessings of love and light to you. Thank you.
And to everybody watching.